Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. One of the most hotly debated issues lately has been surrounding the Milwaukee streetcar proposal. Last month, the Milwaukee Common Council voted 10-5 in favor of Mayor Tom Barrett's $124 million streetcar plan. However, the final approval for the long-argued streetcar will be voted on during the council's next meeting on Tuesday, February 10th. We're going to take a look at both sides of the issue today, beginning with 3rd District Alderman Nik Kovac. He was born and raised on Milwaukee's east side, and he's a product of Milwaukee Public Schools. Alderman Kovac is a graduate of Riverside High School, and he also attended Harvard University and graduated cum laude with a degree in mathematics. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you here, and obviously you're here today because you are in support of Mayor Barrett's streetcar proposal. Explain why that's something you'd like to see.
Well, I think there's two main reasons. One is transportation, the other is economic development. Currently, Milwaukee is the densest city in the country without fixed rail built or in construction. And a lot of people are surprised by that because a lot of people that I've talked to have said, oh, well, I know that rail works in Chicago, I know it works in New York, I know it works in San Francisco, but can it work in Milwaukee? I hear that a lot. And certainly Chicago, New York, and San Francisco are denser than Milwaukee. And even though Milwaukee is now just the 30th biggest city by population, raw population, if you divide by the size of the city, we're actually the 14th densest city in the country, and all of the 13 cities denser than us have it, and most of the cities right behind us, or even pretty far behind us, most of the top 50 have it. So we are really behind the curve when it comes to 21st century transportation, and the federal government is subsidizing it, which makes the economics really pay off for us. And so so one thing is we need to have a better transportation system. We need to have a fixed rail spine of a bus system. A lot of people have tried to characterize this as being about rail versus buses. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay. This is about rail helping buses and vice versa. This will increase ridership. It will hopefully eventually, and once you increase ridership, then you can increase the overall regional commitment to public transit, and you can have one pass that connects you, like in the cities I just talked about, like in every other American city, you can have one pass that connects you rail to bus, or different kinds of passes. I mean, how people actually pay for transit, whether it's by credit card or with a pass, we'll figure that out. And that will evolve too as the operational demands of the system go. So that's one side of it, making Milwaukee the kind of city where you can get around, you can get to work, you can get to and from downtown from every neighborhood conveniently and quickly.
Giving people options. Giving
people options, right. And so obviously a lot of people drive, some people walk, some people bike if they happen to be lucky enough to live close to where they work. But people who don't have cars or don't always want to drive a car that day, it's nice to have an option. It's nice to know. And frankly, the more we have public transit, the more it helps people with cars because it reduces traffic. So it's really a win-win for everybody to have options. The economic development piece, though, I think is maybe the more direct argument, because there's also been a lot of criticism of the financials. Okay. And half of the $124 million, actually slightly more than half, comes directly from the federal government. And that's money that if we don't spend, if we don't spend it, it essentially goes away. It won't go away tomorrow if we don't spend it today, but it will just sit there and it can't be spent on any other use. Yes. And it doesn't increase with inflation. So the longer we wait, the less that value is worth. And we're already in that situation now. One of the reasons the costs have gone up is that we've waited just a few years now since this was originally passed in 2011. But then the other half is coming from the promise of economic development near the route. Okay. And so developers, retailers, businesses, even people choosing just to rent from those developers, rent apartments, they like to have the certainty of knowing the community, the government has made an investment in this particular transit corridor, so then I feel more comfortable putting my development here. And this is not just pie in the sky speculation. This is case study after case study in cities like Portland, even cities like Tacoma, Phoenix, Denver, Kansas City, Little Rock. I mean, across the spectrum, you have cities of very different demographics. Atlanta, for instance. I mean, Atlanta is a city that is a little more racially, demographically like Milwaukee. There's other cities on this list like Minneapolis that get as much or more snow than we do, just trying to click off some of the criticisms here. Well, how do you know this is going to work in Milwaukee? Well, it's true, Milwaukee is unique. There's no other city like Milwaukee, but let's go down the different ways Milwaukee is different, and if you think the streetcar won't work here, we can show you why it worked in other cities and why, when it was put there, development followed. So we're using tax increment financing. which is basically money that comes from the increased property value that the streetcar creates, and you use that as collateral to borrow the money for the initial investment.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, run down your thoughts and all the things that have pretty much come together as this continuous argument.
You can tell I've had this discussion with
You've had it before.
Yes.
But I mean, and that's the reason why I think it's important to have you here, because I hear people at the water cooler talking about it, and there's a lot of misinformation that's out there because you hear
there
people
is a lot,
say,
and it's growing every day. And people there's a reason they're spreading the misinformation on purpose, which I can get into if you want.
Well, I hear people say, well, they should just use that money to fix the roads and this and that. But with this particular grant, it has to be used for transit.
Correct.
So this is why it's not, you're throwing money away for one thing in spite of something else. This is specifically for
This is not fungible money. It cannot be transferred.
Okay, we've definitely clarified that, but I would like to also kind of set the tone for our viewers at home. For some of them, this whole streetcar thing is just now, like, what is this all about? Federal transportation funds and public transit, they've been debated in Wisconsin for 20 years.
More than 20 years, yeah.
More than 20 years. In 1991, the federal government awarded Wisconsin $289 million to improve transit in southeastern Wisconsin. That was supposed to include a light rail system to provide an alternative, like you said earlier, to driving, and needless to say, that never happened. So $91.5 million sat for almost a decade. Believe it or not.
Because some of the money, I think, was spent on the intermodal station and the 6th Street Viaduct. So some of that 289 started getting spent on other things.
On other things.
Because it was so hard, and it was so hard to get over this roadblock, some of which is just legitimately in the ether in Milwaukee. There's just some people who go, didn't we rip these streetcars up in the 1950s? Wasn't there a reason for that? I would argue the reason for that is, at that time, the federal government made a very conscious decision to invest in freeways and to invest in suburban sprawl by subsidizing home mortgages. So the federal government made investments and made subsidies that did actually make streetcars obsolete at that time. Then they realized their mistake and were trying to correct it. But a lot of people in Milwaukee have that memory. Believe me, I get a lot of those calls from folks on the east side who say they remember the streetcar. And probably when it was in its dying phases in the 1950s, it wasn't as effective as it could be. That was also, those are old 1950s trolleys. These are new modern streetcars. But I want to acknowledge that debate is out there, that there are some people who just don't get it, or feel, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, they say I just don't get it. I just don't get why we need it. Traffic and parking isn't that bad in Milwaukee. How is this going to help me? And we try to explain, well, there's options, and it'll make the city better, it'll make it more connected in these different ways. But there's also some interest groups, frankly, and a lot of it's funded by oil and gas money, like the Koch brothers, who are funding Americans for Prosperity and who have admitted that they're on the ground, trying to get people to sign a petition to stop this thing. And their motive is clear. They do not want public transit because it will affect their oil and gas investments.
Wow. So as we look back at this scenario, the mayor specifically asked that those federal dollars be split 60% for a downtown streetcar.
Of the remaining 91 million.
Yes, and 40% to expand the Milwaukee County transit system. So at this point...
And can we go back to that 289? Because one of the criticisms of this project is it's not big enough. Wouldn't it be better if we had true light rail, not just an in-street streetcar, to Wauwatosa or to Waukesha? And the answer is yes, that would be better. And if we had $289 million and that was on the table, I'd be supporting that. But we spent over 20 years debating this and allowing the obstructionists and the cynics to block it. So now we've gone from having 289 to having 91, and we only, as you're about to say, we only have 60% of that. So we have what we have, and we need to spend that money well. But there was it's really a tragic story the last 20 plus years of public transportation money being available, and they're lacking the community will or the government political will to make it happen in Milwaukee. I hope we've finally gotten over that.
Yeah, when I hear this conversation, I sometimes think of, the first cell phone. What if someone said, that one works, it's fine. We don't need to upgrade to this smartphone. What is that, So it's kind of like, I understand where you are saying this is not your grandfather's streetcar. You do have things in mind that will be a positive for this city. You actually call Milwaukee be a world-class city,
Absolutely.
so to speak. You feel like we have everything that some of the bigger cities have, but we are lacking in that department of light rail, transit, things of that nature.
We have the Bucks, we have the Brewers, we have the Packers, we have great theater downtown, we have great cultural assets in our neighborhoods. Most people, once they come to Milwaukee, if they haven't been here before, they're surprised. I mean, some people don't know we have this amazing lake that you can't see the other side of. So some of these salty coasters, you know, from the east and west coast are like, wow, this is nice. But then actually when they experience the town, they're very impressed. And so I think as Milwaukeeans, I mean, I grew up here, I know it too, we're often very humble, and that's a good thing often. But I think we need to not be arrogant, but I think we need to be proud of what we have, and we shouldn't be afraid of becoming even better. And we shouldn't be afraid of being a world-class city.
And opponents of this streetcar proposal, they have until they've given themselves a self-imposed deadline, February 8th, to get is
Although
it
I just heard that might have
31,000
changed.
signatures.
And if I could talk a little bit about these so-called deadlines.
Okay.
I mean, this was originally passed, and back in 2011, by a two-thirds majority of the Common Council, 10-5, even though we only needed 50%. It passed 10-5. At that time, it was a $65 million project. The current referendum they have is to say anytime you spend more than $20 million just on rail, then we should have a referendum. They could have started collecting signatures in 2011. Right, so they've had 3 years. I mean, it's true the costs have gone up, and I can go into which costs have gone up and why. I mean, the route's gotten bigger.
But we're quickly running out of time. This is such an interesting subject.
But the point is, the deadline is their deadline. They created it.
Right.
We're not. There's nothing about. We're just taking our action. We publicly noticed it. We've had this debate. Any deadlines they bring up is of their own making. The 60 days is whenever they start the clock. They could start it today. They could have started it 70 days ago.
But I think I just read that the city attorney has said that this particular scenario of collecting the signatures to do this referendum, the binding referendum, it would not stop the vote.
They're already too late, but they're already too late to stop this. But I mean, they could get this, the principle of, can we just, every time we spend 20 million just on rail, but, which to me is ridiculous. Why we spend 20 million on movable bridges across the river? The state spends billions of dollars on freeway, not construction, but just renovation of interchanges that already exist. Why are we targeting this? So both conceptually, I think this referendum just for rail is clearly targeting mass transit, targeting rail, and, but also on the details of how they've structured this referendum. Yes, it won't be successful because we've already voted.
Okay, so we have established that there are 5 aldermen on the Common Council who are against this whole proposal, and we have some time here, just a few minutes, to kind of break down. You've got Alderman Joe Davis specifically, who says that this situation of poverty and unemployment in our city, the streetcar doesn't help it, and he has an alternative plan. And then you have Alderman Donovan, who most recently came up with an alternative plan. And these are plans that
no, they're not
you
plans.
think, what about?
They're distractions. In the case of Alderman Davis, I think it is a little bit heartbreaking for me because we have a lot of these shared goals. I've co-sponsored legislation with him to ensure that whenever there's a major construction project in Milwaukee, it benefits the city and it benefits underemployed minorities in particular. Myself and Alderman Davis and Alderman Hamilton, Alderman Coggs, Alderman Wade, we're all leaders in this. Alderman Bauman as well. And so he knows, I mean, he can't pretend he doesn't know. He knows that this is a construction project that will create jobs for people in his district and people in the inner city of Milwaukee in particular. And he knows that's one of our goals. So for him to pretend that this is not an economic development project that will create jobs in his district is completely upside down, and he cannot claim to be confused about it. He knows the truth, and he's just chose to distort the truth, frankly, for his own political selfish gains, because he's running for mayor and he wants the public to be misinformed about this project because he thinks it will help his mayoral campaign. To me, it is a true tragedy that someone who represents an area of the city that is in such need of the kind of leadership that he claims to be providing, that he would lie to his own constituents. And he has done that time and time again on this proposal. Alderman Donovan, and we've come to expect that from him, but Alderman Davis, it's a true tragedy that he is cloaking this in goals that he's actually working against behind the scenes.
Okay, do you want to tell us how you really feel? So I do appreciate you coming in and shedding some light on what those aldermen who are for this, and everybody that's for it may have their own different reasons to support this. But
there may come a time when if Alderman Davis's proposal to get light rail in the 30th Street corridor ever gets close to being real, I will support it. But he's not really presenting that proposal seriously now. He's doing that to stop this other proposal. It'll all work together. A streetcar, a bus system, and light rail on the 30th Street corridor can all happen, but they don't need to come at the expense of each other.
Okay.
And Alderman Donovan's plan is just, it's almost high comedy what he's proposing.
Okay.
I haven't even read the whole thing, but people who have can't stop laughing. I don't know what else to describe. I mean, at the last minute, we already have a paratransit service, we already have Uber and Lyft, and he's basically decided, or whoever wrote that for him has decided, oh, well, this will be the efficient 21st century transportation that they just made up on the back of a napkin, where meanwhile, we have major federal grants that are targeted to this kind of transit and that every other major American city has done. Or we go to the back of his napkin.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is very interesting to me, and I'll be very interested in seeing the outcome of this entire scenario. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Alderman Nik Kovac is a supporter of the $124 million streetcar plan, and the Common Council's next vote on the issue is scheduled for February 10th. When we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll continue our conversation about the streetcar plan and get a perspective from someone on the other side of the track. We'll be right back.